Welcome back. There is less than 1 day left to the release of the Code Week edition of the flagship game, and we are still implementing it. In the last session, we introduced the main gameplay functionalities, which allow the player to tap on the flags and to see if the tap is wrong or correct. If it is wrong, then the flag disappears. If it is correct, it does not. However, there were several issues left open in the last session, and in particular, we had to deal with double taps on the same flag. What happened is that if a flag was correct, then it was not removed, and then at next tap, it may happen that it became wrong just because a flag following in the ordering was tapped first. So I fixed this issue, and this will be the starting point for our coding session right now. But before doing what is the main purpose of this coding session, which is adding score, I wanted to illustrate the changes that I made since the last version. So first of all, let me show you the effect of the changes, and then I will show you the code. So this is what we did last time, and now if I tap a flag, the first tap is always correct, and it does not only stay here without disappearing, but the two functionalities that I added is that a small number appears here close to the flag, representing the current count of status of a counter of correct taps, and the name of the country corresponding to the flag appears here. If I tap another one which is in the correct order with respect to the previous one, then it does not disappear because it is a correct tap, and the name of the country appears on the top. If I tap this one, which is still correct, then the counter is incremented, the number appears, the flag stay here, and so on. Now notice that if I tap again on these flags, nothing happens because I disabled them after the first tap, and I'll show you in a moment how I did it. Then if I tap something which is wrong, then as you can see, the flag disappears, and only if I tap on flags which are in the correct order, then they stay, the small number appears, and so on. And the game is over when all the flags have been tapped once. Okay, so those are the main functionalities. And notice also that I removed the label that I used for debugging purposes here. Now let's see how these functionalities were implemented. So first of all, how I disabled the flags after the first tap. I did it within this function, which is correct tap, and in correct tap I used this instruction which set the image sprite enabled, which is a property of image sprites, to false if it is tapped correctly the first time. Then to write the small number, I used the functions which are associated with canvases. In the canvas that we have here is called grid, and I can set a paint color to white, and I can draw a text. The text is the current status of the counter variable at a given position, and the position is taken from the x and y positions of the sprite, and then I add a small misplacement in order to put the number in the exact position where I want it to appear. Then I have also to show you how I made the name of the country appear in red. And to this purpose, I used a label that we added to our interface, which is called tapped. And this label in the interface was introduced here, you see, between the two button in the command bar, and the color was red. Now let's go back to the block editor, to see how I set it. So here I set the text of tapped as I set it to the element to an element taken from a list which is called the selected labels. This list didn't exist in the last version, so I added it here. You see that here I have the labels, so let me see where they are. Here. Okay, so I added a list of labels to the other two lists that I already had, which were the countries and the values in the ordering. So the values are the ones which are used for a sorting criterion, while labels are a representation of the same criterion but just for visualization reasons. On the other hand, once I had this list, which has the same structure and the same size of the other ones, the list of countries and the list of values, I have also to process it according to the randomization functions, which take just 16 countries out from the overall set and at a given order. So in the get data function, I added this statement here that extracts to another set called the selected labels just the labels associated with the countries which are represented in the grid, and that's it. Okay, so those are all the changes that I made with respect to the last version. Now we have to introduce the score. And notice that it is very useful to have these small numbers because according to our scoring rules, they represent the contribution of this particular tab to the overall score, in the sense that the overall score in this case would be 1 by 2 by 3 by 4, so it will be 24 in this particular case. Okay, so let's try to play with this. So I need first of all to add a variable, a global variable to represent the score. So I go into the variable menu and I initialize a new variable called the score and initialize it to 0. Or better, let me initialize it to 1. Why I initialize it to 1? Just because I want all the correct tabs to contribute by multiplying the score by the number of correct tabs so far. So if I initialize the value to 0, I need to put an exception at the first tab. Otherwise, I can use the first tab as all the others as a multiplicative factor. So it is much easier for me. So let's initialize it to 1. And now to adjust the score, I go into the piece of code which is used to deal with tabs, which is this one, when grid touched, and I have to decide where to add where to update the score. And the position in which I want to update the score is this one, which corresponds to correct tabs. So I can go here and use this statement, which is set score to, and then I need some math to multiply the current value of the score by the value of the counter, which is this one. Notice that I do it once the counter has been incremented, or otherwise the counter at the first tap would be 0 and it would reset the global score to 0. In this way, instead, the first tap, the score remains 1, the second tap it becomes 2, and so on. Then what I have to do is to visualize the score. And since we added a label called score val, then I can directly update this value, the text to be displayed in this label. So I can use this statement, this instruction here, to assign the value of the global score to this label. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, it's downloading. Play the game. Okay, so the score is 1. Now it becomes 2, 6, and then it does not increase anymore because I'm tapping wrong flags. Oops, sorry. This is something that does not depend on the application, but on the emulator that sometimes stops. So let's try it again. But on the other hand, it seems correct what we did because the score is changing at our taps. This is something pretty exciting because it is the first time that we see the score that we are achieving while playing with FlagShip. So I'm pretty excited about this, and that's it. So 24 is the final score. I noticed something, so let me test this because I think there is something wrong here. So if I restart the game, look, this is exactly what I expected. As you can see, there is an issue here because the flag disappeared, the score didn't change, and so on. So we need to do something at restart in order to make sure that the counter is reset and that the previous value is reset and that the score is reset. So let's do it right now. So at restart, we have prepare screen, gameplay initialize. We have to go within the new game function, and within this function we need to reset a few global variables. So let's take the global variables that we need to reset, which are the score, which has to be set to 1, then we need to, sorry, not to 0 but to 1. Then we need also to reset, let me see, the counter to 0, and then also the previous value. No, what we have to do is to yeah, okay, we can reset even the previous value, which is this one, what it is. revval. Okay, now let's see if it works. Okay, downloaded. Let's try this version. Ireland, Sweden. Okay. Oops. Too bad. It stopped exactly when we needed it to work to see if at restart still worked. Okay, without waiting for all the flags to be tapped, I can restart it at any time, and then, as you can see, it restart from scratch, and also the taps are properly taken as correct or wrong. Okay, I think it's enough. What I noticed is that we need to also change the text in the score label, or otherwise at restart it seems that the score starts from the previous score rather than from 0 from 1. So let me take this from here, which is score val, and set text set score val text to global score. Global score. Here it is. Then I noticed something else, that when we tap on a wrong flag, the name does not appear. In fact, if I go down where this code has been inserted, let me see. Here it is. The tapped label is set only when there is a correct tap, while in the else case it is not, while I want it to be set in any case. To this purpose I can do it here, or otherwise, let me see, I can probably notice that there is an if statement here, and this is done in both cases. So instead of putting it inside the if clause, I can put it after, in order to be executed in both cases without having to write it twice. So let's see if it works this way. Okay, and notice that I can do it because this is a global variable, and this is a current value which is properly defined here. Yeah, yes, because the current value is defined here. That's fine. Okay, it should work. Let's build and test it. Okay. Okay, let's play the game. You see, even a wrong tap corresponds to a display of the name of the tapped flag. And this is very useful for educational purposes, because if I'm doing something wrong, this is probably because I don't know exactly what the flags are associated with. So which country the flags belong to. So if I can tap on a flag and see the name of the country, this is much better than just having the flag disappear if I do something wrong. Okay, good. Now let me restart it, and at restart this is reset as we wanted. Great. Okay, now there is just one thing that we need to implement for compliance to the score rules, which is time. As you probably remember from the specifications, or you can read the specification if you didn't, if you haven't done so far, the time is taken either as a bonus or as a penalty to define the final score. In particular, the game is assumed to be played in 1 minute, so that all the seconds to the first minute are taken as a bonus, which multiplies the score, while the second in excess with respect to 1 minute are taken as a penalty, which is used to divide the score. So let's see how to add time. And to add time, we need another element which is taken from, let me see, where is it? Okay, here it is. It is among the sensors. So I have to add a clock to the interface. The clock is a non-visible component, and I can, to set the properties of the clock, notice that there is a timer always fires, which is checked. This is good. Timer enabled. I don't want it to be enabled at when the application is launched, because I want it to be enabled just when we start playing the game. And then there is a timer interval, which is expressed in milliseconds. So right now it is set to 1000, meaning that the clock will fire once per second, which is what we want, because seconds are the proper time unit for our purposes. So let's go back to the block editor and see which instructions are associated with the new interface element, which is the clock. Okay, so this is what I need, something which is triggered by the clock. So if the clock fires once per second, then I need once per second to do something. What to do will be written inside here. Then I also need a global variable to take track of time, and I will call this new global variable time. Okay, and it will be initialized to 0. Then the first thing that I need to do when the clock fires is just to increment time. So, oops, sorry, here it is. No, I'm doing something wrong. Okay, then I need some math to add 1 to the current value of time. Okay. Then I want also this current value of time to be displayed, because I have a label added to this purpose, which is called time val. So I will set the text of the time val label to the current value of time. Okay. Then since all the seconds exceeding 1 minute are seen as a penalty, I want also the color of the label to change, for instance, from white to red. If so, I need an if statement if the time exceeds 60. The time counter exceeds 60. So I need this one. As soon as it gets to 60, then the color of the label will be changed into red. Text color, here it is. Let me take red from the list of colors, here it is, and that's it. Notice that I don't need to change it every time. So here I say if equal and not if greater or equal, because once it is changed, it is kept changed. Okay? Okay. Now, there are just a few issues. First one is that in this way, the timer is is not enabling, sorry, because in the interface, in the designer, I specified that the timer was not enabled. So I need to enable it each time it is a game is started, and then I need also to reset time each time a new game is started. So let me do this. I duplicate this one and I reset the timer. Okay, and then I enable the timer. And to this purpose, I need to go here. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Set clock 1 timer enabled to true. Okay, then since the time will affect the score, it is probably better to make it apparent to the end user. So I need every second, even if no flags are tapped, to adjust the score according to the time which is running. So at every second, I need to update the score. And to this purpose, I do this by setting the global variable, which is the score, or instead of setting the global variable, I could just probably change yes, let's do so. I will just change the score which is visualized while keeping track of the actual score and of the penalty separately. So the score, instead of changing the score, let me change just the label, the text of the label called the score bar, used to display the score. And here I need to implement some functionalities which process the current score in two different ways depending on the fact that it has to be multiplied or divided by the seconds in excess. And then I want also the score to be an integer, so in case of a division I want to take the integer value closer to that. So instead of writing the code directly here, I can add a procedure which is called for instance, adjust score. And here, oh, actually this is not the proper type of procedure that I need, because I need this procedure to return the value of the score. So let me define it here, adjust score, and then I use it where it is. Okay, so inside this procedure, which is the adjust score, I can do the following. First, I can just put an if statement with both the if and else clauses. So this is not the correct one. Instead, I can use directly this one, if then else. This is a block which has a condition here, and then for each of the two cases, then and else, it has some code which returns a value, and then it returns one of the two values depending on the condition. So the if is based on the current value of time. So I use this one to see if time is less or equal than. In this case, I take the less than first, and I use the global time, which is this one, and then 60, which is a constant here. And in the then case, I have just to multiply the score. So let me take some math. I use the ceiling operator to approximate to the upper integer the result. In this case, is just a multiplication, so the result would be an integer if both the operands are, but in any case, I have to use this operator here and to take the score, which is the global variable, and to multiply it by the difference between 60 and the current time. That's why I cannot include the case in which the global time is equal to 60, because otherwise it would become 0, while I don't want it to become 0. In the else case, I have to distinguish between two more cases. One is the case in which we have a time which is greater than 60, and the other one in which we have the equal case, so the time is exactly 60. So in case of time being exactly 60, I don't want the score to be processed, so I return exactly the score. So let me use another if statement. You see, I have two nested if statements. So if this happens, then we have this case. If this doesn't happen, then it could be greater or equal, and these two cases will be distinguished here. So I need another statement like this, where I change the comparison to greater. Then I take also this one but I have to change the operator because I need to divide in this case rather than multiplying. And then I need also to exchange these two. And finally, in the last case, I will return just the score unchanged. Okay, let's see if it works. Build and save. Okay, let's take this one, the new version. Play the game. Okay, you see, now we have time here, and the score started from 60 because the score is initialized to 1 and multiplied by 60, and then as the time elapses, it is multiplied by the remaining seconds of the first minute. Then we start playing. Oh, there is something wrong here. Oh, because you see what happens, that as the score is changed because of a correct tap, then it so notice this would be a correct tap, and what happens here is that the score is changed without taking into account time. Oh, sorry, this was wrong. This is a correct tap, you see, and then it will be processed at the next trigger of the timer. So let's try to fix this issue. Oh, notice that it changed to red after 60, and that's good. And then it keeps changing, and now it became so low that it became less. It has become less than 1, and because since we are using the ceiling operator, it is stuck to 1 now, and that's correct. But what is not correct is that now the score is visualized here without here it is, without adjusting it, while instead of just writing the score, we need to call this function. So let me get rid of this and to call the adjust score function. And this demonstrates the usefulness of having defined the functionality of the adjust score in a separate function, because otherwise we had to rewrite all these code segments inside here. Okay. Okay, I think that we are more or less in business, but we need to test it before closing this session. So let's try it again. Okay, almost here. Here it is. Okay. Okay, I think it works fine. You see, it has become quite challenging now. Okay, and this is the end of the game because all the taps have been, all the flags have been tapped. Notice, however, that the time keeps going and the score keeps decreasing. So we need also to add a counter of the total number of taps in order to handle the game over. So the game over conditions is not handled this time. So to this purpose, we can do this way, adding a global variable, which is called tabs, and its initialized to 0, and then it is incremented. Okay, we already did this. Duplicate. So at each tab, wrong or correct, we need to increment this counter, which is called the tabs. And this would help us dealing with game over, because we could add an if statement saying that if tabs becomes equal to 16, then we define a new procedure called game over. Here we just call this procedure, which is game over. And in game over, we can say, for instance, that we want the clock to stop. Set clock 1 timer enabled to false. Okay, and then I need also to initialize tabs every time we start a new game. So we have always to remember that inside here we have to initialize all the variables which are counters of something happening during a game, during a match. So this is the number of tabs initialized to 0. Okay, let's build it again and test it. Here is the new version. Let's try it. Play the game, and now we can play the game. This would be not really a good run. Oops, it stopped. Let's try it again. We need to play the game without incurring in any stop of the too bad. Okay, let me try it from scratch, because we need to play it to play a game completely in order to see if we are properly dealing with game over. But unfortunately, sometimes the emulator stops, not because of something wrong that we did in the code, but because of instability of the emulator itself. Okay, almost done. Finger crossed. Okay, here we are. You see? Now the time has stopped and the score as well. So game over is properly handled right now. I think that we could be pretty satisfied so far, because this is a game we can really play with. So this is implementing the functionality that was specified in the specification, apart from a few additional elements. The first one is that at the end of the game, at game over, I would like a pop-up window to appear to say whether or not I improved my best score, and in case I did, I want my score to be stored and kept persistently in my device as my best score. So we need still to deal with this, and I want also my score to be posted, possibly posted on social networks. Okay, so this is a functionality that needs to be added. Then the other two functions that need to be implemented are suggestions and hints. So I would say that there is very little time left before the release of the Code Week edition. There are more or less 20 hours from now. And I think that all those functionalities won't probably be implemented in time, but we will keep working on the flagship game forever, so don't worry. On the other hand, for tomorrow, for sure, a version will be released in which the best score is properly handled in order to make all of us able to run contests and to share our best scores with friends and with each other in order to see who will win. And notice that even if this is a very preliminary version, this is already implementing exactly the scoring rules stated in the specification. So this means that while playing with this preliminary version, we can achieve scores which are then comparable with all the scores that will be achieved with all other versions of the game. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you very much. Bye bye.